Welcome everybody to this hybrid meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I have agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. Thank you. Item 1, apologies and substitutes.
Yes, Vice Convener, we have apologies from Councillors Whiteside, Boyd and Wan, with Councillors Clark and Fotheringham substituting for Councillors Beattie and Wan. Thank you.
Item 2, declarations of interest and statements of transparency. I would remind all members, in terms of the Council's Code of Conduct, it is their responsibility to make decisions about whether to declare an interest in any item on the agenda and whether to take part in any discussions or voting. Completed declarations of interest forms should be forwarded to Democratic Services. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Item 10, the Common Good approvals. I think need to declare an interest because one of the Montrose ones is to put some money towards work which is going to benefit Montrose Golf Links Limited, which I'm a council appointed director of. So I think I will have to leave, well, the whole item or that bit of the item as advised, I think.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gall.
Thank you, Vice Convener. It was just to echo exactly Councillor Duff's position. I'm in exactly the same position, so we'll leave at that point or part of that point when that's discussed for agenda item 10.
Yep, Jackie.
Convener, in light of these direct declarations of interest, which are quite particular to one aspect of the common good allocation, I could suggest that that be dealt with separately so the members could remain in situ and vote on any other aspects, if that would be acceptable to the committee.
Yep, that sounds fine.
Thank you.
You just keep me right, Jack. I don't see any other hands, so we'll move on. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. We submit for approval as a correct record the minute of the meeting of this committee of the 4th of June 2004. Can we agree them as a true record? Thank you. Item 4, possible exclusion of public and press. The committee will be asked to consider in terms of Standing Order 27(2) whether the public and press should be excluded during consideration of items 18 to 24 so as to avoid the disclosure of information which is exempt in terms of Part 1, Schedule 7A to the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Can we agree on that exclusion? Thank you. Sorry, item 5, financial outturn and draft accounts update. This is report 204 of 24, and to talk to that report we have the Director of Finance. Ian?
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon, members of the committee. So this report summarises the financial results of the Council for last financial year. It also seeks approval of spending plans to use some of the uncommitted reserves available following conclusion of last financial year. There's a lot of detail in the report in terms of numbers, and reasons for variances are explained in the appendices. So just a couple of brief comments by way of introduction. As far as the General Fund was concerned, the General Fund revenue budget, The position is set out on page 11 in table 1A, and it shows that compared to the projected position when the council set the current year's budget back in February, the position has moved from a projected deficit at that point of 821,000 to a surplus of 751,000, so a circa £1.5 million turnaround, which has obviously gone in the right direction as the year has gone on. On a gross basis, still sticking with general fund revenue, on a gross basis we're about 3.7 million better off than where we'd expected to be. That's in relation to Beach Hill House service concessions. It was roughly close to £1 million in relation to that. We did better in relation to interest and revenue balances income by about 1.4 million. That's a kind of one-off. The position in relation to the MEB contract in the gain share there was better than what we had expected to be, but still below the budgeted level. And we also had a saving on capital financing costs. I'm very much summarising what is a lot of detail in the report. In terms of housing, the housing revenue outturn position was an underspend of 1.2 million for the year. Capital over both general fund and housing, there was nearly 35 million of expenditure invested in various projects across Angus during last year. In relation to the Council's reserves, Table 9, which is on page 16 of the paper, shows the position overall in relation to our reserves. They've fallen by 12.4 million over the course of the year. That was largely planned, and I would say our reserves are still in a strong position for the challenges that lie ahead. When we set the Council budget, I say we, when you as councillors set the Council budget back in February this year, all of the uncommitted reserves that were projected to be available at that time were utilised. And because of what I've gone through there in terms of a better final outturn position for the year than we had been expecting, we've ended the year with 2.147 million of uncommitted general fund reserves that hadn't been expected. So that's a better position than what we had anticipated. Section 7 of the report makes proposals to utilise 1 million of that 2.1 that's available. The proposal is that would be used towards winter resilience works and activities and to cover those works arising from storms Isha and Jocelyn, which weren't covered under the Bellwyn scheme funding. And we think that's a proactive use of funds as we head towards winter again. Table 11, which is on page 18 of the combined paper, sets out the proposed works and activities. And Convener, that's all I wanted to say by way of introduction. Obviously, a lot of detail in the report, and happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions from members? Councillor Speed.
Okay, yep, thank you. It was in relation to page 16, table 10, and the general fund reserve commitments. I just wondered if you could provide an update in terms of the toilets accessible to all, which I clearly remember the definition of that was in terms of change in places and disabled toilet provision within Angus, and that money was going to be used to maximise those facilities. I just wondered if you could provide an update and what the kind of implications are in terms of where that money sits and where it will sit going forward.
Through you, Convener, not in terms of the detail of where we are in terms of the progress of the spend, but the money has still been earmarked so that if and when the opportunity comes up to make that investment, that money would be available for that purpose. I'd need to double check with colleagues in waste services in terms of the progress with spending that money, but it is still there as earmarked within the general reserve.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it would be really helpful to receive an update after the meeting with regards to the scope and work that was to be carried out. I just know that in particular older people and people with disabilities are absolutely bursting for change in this area, quite literally, because it is often something that they experience as being the greatest barrier when they're out and about. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Convener. It was in relation to Appendix D on page 32 and the the money held by Angus schools. I'm aware from the narrative that money can't be spent on anything else. But I wondered, does it carry over to next year? Are there adjustments made to budgets in the next financial year because of any over and under spends? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Bell, and again through you, Convener. Yeah, very much so. That money is ring fenced entirely through the devolved school management, the DSM scheme, and so that money is there to be used along with the current year's budget allocations by schools and by head teachers in terms of how they want to use those funds. So those are ring fenced within the reserves position.
Thank you for that. I don't see any other questions. Are there any comments? Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'd like to thank Mr Lorimer for the report and the explanation. Obviously, it's pleasing to see the revenue position slightly better than we were predicting at the budget time, and I'm particularly pleased to see the proposals to use $1 million of the 2.1 million effectively extra money used on two things. One, to deal with some of the storm damage that isn't covered by the Bellwyn scheme, about £500,000 there, and putting in £530,000 in essentially work to make us more resilient, whether it's floods or whatever. We know we're getting more extreme weather conditions all the time, and putting a little bit of money into that, I think, is prudent. The old adage, a stitch in time saves 9. So yeah, I'm pleased to see that, and it's thankfully a slightly better position than we were predicting 6 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. And there are no other comments. We'll move to the recommendations. There are quite a few of them. The recommendations are A, that we note the 2003-2004 annual accounts were submitted to Audit Scotland by the 30th of June in accordance with the statutory requirements. B, note that the Council's annual accounts were published on the Council's website on the 28th of June 2004. C, note the revenue budget performance and associated commentary as set out in section 5 and appendices A, B and D of this report. D, notes the capital budget performance and associated commentary as set out in section 5 of appendix C of this report. E, approves that 0.075 million of prior year 100% carry forward not utilised in 2003-04 due to delays in project and plans being carried forward to 2004-05 as set out in section 5.14. F, agrees that funding of 1 million from the Council's uncommitted general reserves be utilised in the current financial year to support winter resilience works and activities, and the additional cost of repairs arising from Storm Aisha and Jocelyn, which were not covered by the Bellwyn scheme as set out in section 7. And G, note that the use of the remaining uncommitted general fund reserves will be considered as part of the 2005-2006 budget. Do we agree and note? Agreed. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 6, final capital budget general fund. And again, we have the Director of Finance.
Thank you, Convener. This report presents the final capital budget for financial year 24-25. The Council agreed a provisional capital budget in February this year at the budget setting meeting. That provisional budget has now been updated based on the level of progress, project progress and spend actually achieved last financial year. The proposed final capital budget in this report has been reviewed in detail by the Capital Projects Monitoring Group, the CPMG, but it does require this committee's formal approval, largely because of a reprofiling of the timing of projects and associated expenditure. The final capital budget for the 24-25 is reduced by about 9 million compared to the provisional budget from February. That's delayed expenditure rather than expenditure that's gone away, and at 40 odd million pounds is still the largest spend in any year in the current 5-year planning period. The committee is also asked to approve a request to allocate an additional £100,000 from the capital contingency to support the public sector housing grants programme. Again, happy to answer any questions, Convener.
Do you have any questions from members? Any comments? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations, and the recommendations are that 1, we note the contents of this report and approve the content of the updated 2003 to 2008 General Fund Capital Plan. 2, note that the 2004-2005 capital budget in Appendix A represents the Council's approved budget for the General Fund capital monitoring purposes. And 3, approves the request for additional funding of 0.100 million, paragraph 6 to refers. Do we agree and approve and note? Thank you. We'll move now to item 7, which is page 63 in your papers. This is preparation of the 2005-2006 General Fund revenue and capital budgets, and again we have the Director of Finance.
Thanks again, Convener. It's reached that point in the year where the Council needs to begin the preparation of the budgets for financial year 25-26. And this report sets out the broad strategy and the timeline to deliver that work. Both the process and the timeline are largely the same as was adopted for the setting of the budget for the current financial year, and it's all designed, all being well, to enable the Council to set a budget and a council tax in February 2025. And again, happy to take any questions, Convener.
Do members have any questions? Comments? Okay, then we'll move to recommendations. The recommendations are: 1, approves the broad strategy and approach to the budget preparation as set out in section 6 of this report. 2, approves the budget timeline as set out in Appendix A to the report. 3, notes the intended continuation of the revised arrangements for the policy and budget strategy group as set out in section 6.3, and notes the final sign-off of the Council's revenue and capital budgets is intended to take place in February 2005. Do we approve and note? Thank you. We'll move to item 8, page 69 in your papers. And this is the change programme update. And again, we have the Director of Finance.
Thank you again, Convener. This report provides the first update of this financial year on the progress with the Council's change programme. Good progress has generally been made overall, but there has been some adjustments, as I set out in the paper. A bit of adjustment, a bit of slippage on a small number of savings, resulting in an updated target of just over 5.9 million now, instead of the 6 point odd that we were aiming for at budget setting. So that's a decrease in year of 370,000. However, over the 3-year period, it's mainly slippage over the years. It's mainly there's only 30,000 of that we're currently saying we don't think will be deliverable at all now. And the detail of that's set out in paragraphs 513 and 514. The value of change programme savings that have been completed so far this financial year is 3.236 million. That's about 54% of the revised target for the year. And actually, since this report was prepared, a couple of other projects have also now completed. Appendix 1 to this report lists all of the projects in the change programme over the current 3-year planning period. Those that are shaded in that appendix blue are complete. Those that are shaded amber have some risk attached, so we're monitoring those closely in terms of delivery. And those that are shaded green are not yet complete, but we think are on track. The report also provides an update on the change fund and notes that the uncommitted balance on that fund is now nil. And the report therefore asks the committee to approve the topping up of that fund by £200,000 from the money that was set aside in the reserve strategy for spend to save projects. The final point I wanted to just make in terms of introducing this report was in paragraph 6.2, and what we're really kind of saying there is for the next iteration of the change programme from financial year 25-26 onwards, the intention is for the change programme to focus as well as on the savings and the financial reductions that need to be made, to also provide a bit more balance around the transformational and other work that the Council is doing as part of its wider change programme. Again, happy to take any questions on the report, Convener.
And maybe bring in Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, I would like to bring notice of a motion, if I may, which I believe will be circulated to members. As part of the ongoing savings to be found from all services, 150,000 was originally identified from economic development for 24-25 as part of the change programme. And whilst economic development is not a statutory service of the Council, supporting the local economy is a priority, and the Economic Development Service plays a vital role in supporting business, inward investment, land and property portfolio, delivery of the employability programmes, sectoral support, and not to mention the T-Cities deal. So it deals with a lot whilst it's also facing budgetary challenges. Services provided in the last few years have included vital support to business through COVID grants and supporting people into employment through the cost of living crisis. So what you should have is coming round the motion for agenda item 8, which is to move in addition to recommendations 1 and 2 in report 243/24, the committee also agrees that the planned saving of 150,000 in the financial year 24-25 from the Economic Development Review be cancelled to ensure we have an economic development service that is resourced to deliver on our priorities and be fit for the future, with the financial impact of that cancelled saving in 24-25 being met from the Council's uncommitted General Reserve Fund.
Thank you. That motion will be circulated. Would members like a short recess to consider that? Would 10 minutes suffice? Yes. Yeah? Okay, if we come back then at 2:30, is that okay? That's about 8 minutes. Is that all right? Yeah, okay then. Thank you.
Can we stop the live stream, please?
Welcome back, everyone. I'll move to Councillor MacDonald and ask if he has a seconder for his motion.
Councillor Brace.
Councillor Braze, would you like to say something?
No, not really. I think Councillor MacDonald's given a very good account of why this is necessary. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll now open the floor for questions. Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. I can absolutely see the merits in bringing this motion and, aware of the value in terms of the economic development team and the work that they do and what could be achieved here. However, I just wondered if I could have kind of an explanation in terms of, I guess, this proposal, this motion, and why previous suggestions in terms of savings that were earmarked to be made, for example, our early years education practitioners, which didn't receive the support to even be heard and debated in chamber. Why does this differ when we previously were talking of the needs of our most kind of vulnerable children and young people within Angus? Because I would imagine that ultimately, if we don't make this saving here, we will have to find a saving elsewhere.
Councillor MacDonald.
Not sure that's a question for me, Councillor Meakin.
Okay. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think the commentary from the finance director does make the point that while we are funding this from reserves for this year, it will have to become part of the budget for 25-26. So we will have to put in additional resources in the new financial year to cover this cost, which potentially means looking at the overall budget and potentially covering it by perhaps council tax. I mean, our view is that economic development is hugely important. We want to grow our economy, and we also want to make sure that we maximise the benefit from the Tay-City deal money, which I think we're still looking about something like 15-20 million of projects we've got to land, and we have to ensure that we have adequate staffing in economic development to deliver that. So I think that the economic priorities there, which from that will flow good jobs, and that improves the prosperity of Angus. So I think there's a fairly strong argument for Councillor MacDonald's motion.
So just for clarity, though, but what you're saying is that money will need to be invested in future years. It can't be a one-off, and those will need to be taken from somewhere else.
Well, I mean that's what I'm saying is we'll fund it this year from reserves. We can't fund it next year from reserves. That wouldn't be acceptable. We would have to fund it as part of the overall council budget. We've already flagged up the very strong likelihood that we will need a significant council tax increase. So £150,000 is 0.3% of a council tax increase, I think, roughly speaking. So that would just be part of the overall calculations we do come January and February.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Are there any other questions? Any comments? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Vice Convener. We had a similar question as to Councillor Speed's, but we obviously have concerns that this is a bit of a short-term fix, and where is this going to be continued to be funded going forward, which I believe Councillor Duff has alluded to with the council tax budget setting in February next year. So that's all I just want to say.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Speed.
Yeah, I think just to kind of add to that, I guess I just have concerns about supporting this in isolation, especially when we're unclear as to what the knock-on implications will be on other equally important aspects of our business and services that we provide, particularly to our most vulnerable. And I just don't believe it's something that we can take in isolation.
Thank you for that. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, this is not actually in isolation. This is a change to the change programme, and the change programme is delivered massively over the last few years, as we have talked about. The ultimate goal with economic development is we're currently 29th out of 32 in terms of local authorities delivering investment. We've got the renewables boom coming from offshore, and all we hear about is Aberdeen, and we don't hear Angus beating the drum for the renewables revolution that's coming. And it's something that I think everybody in the chamber should be looking towards. And if we're not fit and ready in an economic development department to be delivering the opportunities that are available to our citizens, that just transition for our oil and gas workers and everybody else that needs a job, we need to get to that point. Angus is in a prime location. We've got a cracking port, we've got cracking people, and we've got good services here. And this is the start of an opportunity to actually back our economic development team in a new guise, in an agile forum, and it also meets the council's goals, targets, aspirations. So I appreciate what Councillor Speed's saying, but this is the opportunity for our economic development team to start delivering, on top of what they already do, opportunities to bring money into the local area, which then drives our economy, which then helps us out as a local authority. That's why this is the first initial start. We saw an opportunity to make that change to the change programme, to make the council fit for the future and the opportunities that it brings. And that's why we'll be looking at the next budget process in a different way to deliver things to take advantage of the opportunities that Angus is in a prime position to capitalise on.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Are there any other comments? No. Okay, on the motion, are we happy to support the motion, or do we have an amendment and we will move to a vote? No offers?
Can I just ask if this is time critical? Do we need to make this decision today? Could the amendment be that we kind of park this for now until we have further discussions and we look at it in the context of the wider budget proposals? Because although the ambitions and the hopes for this are very clear, and I think we would all agree it's ambitious and it's positive, we're not seeing it in the wider context, and we don't know what the other knock-on implications are.
If you bear with me.
Through the convener, in terms of procedural advice, there's a motion being put forward. So what I would suggest is that you can have a vote taken on that procedural, on the motion as being put forward, the recommendations as amended by the motion. And if you were to vote against it in terms of that, then the motion would not be passed. Alternatively, you could simply just accept that the recommendations of the report are what you want to put forward. But I can't put forward an amendment to pause this piece of work, so it's not committing to, it's not saying yes or no, it's just saying that we pause it until we have more information in terms of the wider picture. Yes, in terms of the new standing orders, you're entitled to do that because it only came up during the course of the debate. So if you'd just like to clarify the wording, and then we can put that to the members. Sorry, just that a decision isn't taken today with regards to that until we have more information and we're able to view it in light of the wider budget context. Well, it's been stated that those savings would need to be found from elsewhere within council, and so I just would like to have a bit more information around, well, where, because all our services are important and may have a knock-on impact on our residents.
Can I maybe bring in Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Just to bring some additional comments to this. So as things stand, the Council agreed a change programme that included an economic development review with a target saving of 150,000. If the decision is deferred today, that is essentially what we as officers will continue to try and deliver. So the work to, in terms of the staff and all the other things, that would continue. If there's a decision today to not take that forward, then all of that work stops. And the issue of how that gap then in terms of our planned savings programme would be covered in future years will be wrapped up as part of the 25-26 budget setting. Now, there will need to be an update and a new version of the change programme created for 25-26 and the 2 years thereafter. There'll be a whole manner of things that will come into the equation of what affects the 25-26 budget setting, not least the government grant allocations. All of that is still to be decided. But if there's not a decision to go ahead with the motion today, we would, as officers, have to continue to work on that review and potentially be ready to implement that. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of a bit of further context.
Councillor Speed, do you have a seconder? Councillor Fotheringham. So we have a motion and we have an amendment. We move to a vote. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. Perhaps we maybe should ask the Director of Vibrant Communities what implications delaying this change might have in terms of the Economic Development Department.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. So as Ian outlined, this is a saving that's proposed, has been agreed through the change programme. The Economic Development Service Review has been underway for some time and is nearing conclusion alongside the preparation of an economic development strategy. So staff are under review at the moment and have been some time, and with a aim to try and conclude that by the end of October. So if we have any deferral of or decision on this today, we would be working, as Mr Lorimer said, to that deadline. We would be restructuring the service on the basis of taking out the £150,000 saving, which is likely to be from staff, given the reduced budgets that are in place at the moment anyway.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there any other comments? No? Okay.
The motion by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Breeze, is to approve recommendations 1 and 2 as detailed in the report, with an additional recommendation 3 to agree that the planned saving of £150,000 in financial year 24-25 from the Economic Development Review be cancelled to ensure we have an economic development service that is resourced to deliver our priorities and fit for the future, with the financial impact of that cancelled saving in 24-25 being met from the Council's uncommitted General Fund Reserve. The amendment by Councillor Speed, seconded by Councillor Fotheringham, is to defer consideration of the report until the wider impact on the budget is known. Please vote motion or amendment. Vice Convener.
Motion.
Councillor Clark.
Motion.
Councillor Bell.
Motion.
Councillor Breeze.
Motion.
Councillor Cowdy. Councillor Cruikshank.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Motion.
Councillor Gall.
Motion.
Councillor Gregg.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor McLaren. Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Speed.
Amendment.
I think that deals with item 8. Just a note that this report will also be considered by the Scrutiny and Audit Committee on the 22nd of October 2024. If we move to item 9, which is page 7. On item 8. Yeah.
The one we've just done.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did actually ask for comments, but
I thought that was comment to the
all right.
To the amendments in the motion. My comment is that in item 5.7, I have concerns and disagree with the removal of specialist visiting teachers' role in the primary schools. That's just a comment from me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholl. With that, we'll move to item 9, Community Alarm Digital Alarm Receiving Centre, page 76, and we have Eunice McClellan to introduce this report. Eunice.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm pleased to bring this report today for your consideration. So, a bit of background: the Community Alarm Control Centre is the main communication alarm for the alarm service and is a region of over 3,000 service users in Angus. The current system is experiencing numerous failures due to its age and pressure of supporting digital connections, and is at high risk of connection failure due to the proposed switch off to the analogue phone network, which was originally planned for 2025 but has now been extended to 2027. For those of you who are not aware, the Community Alarm and Telecare service provides an alarm unit with a pendant or some other form of telecare that can enable a person to live independently in their own home. And the alarm unit or device will call into the alarm receiving centre when somebody's needing some support or help, and it will be answered by the member of staff who will triage the situation and then deploy a resource to support that person. For a period of time now, the service has been challenged due to the unreliability of the current system, which was installed in December 2002, and despite a number of upgrades, we are needing to relook at the whole system. If we want to continue to offer an alarm service for the people of Angus, then we will need to replace the current analogue system to a digital solution. So today I'm asking for consideration that we procure a new digital alarm receiving centre service via the Scotland Excel framework as outlined in my report, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eunice. I'll open up to questions. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Just a little bit more information around how this is going to work. My granny's got the community alarm, so she's got the box in her house. She's got her pendant, which she never wears.
She should.
I know, we keep telling her. So that's at the customer's end.
Yes.
So when they press the button, it goes through to the centre in Thorford.
That's correct, yes.
So with this upgrade, because of the digital network, is that solely just at this call centre end, or will there be new equipment going into the people's houses as well, or will those two work hand in hand, or will that need an upgrade? And then also, if that person's phone line is still analogue and we're all digital, how does that all work?
That's quite technical. My understanding is this is purely for the centre, so this is about upgrading the centre. So what's in people's houses will not change, because people's phone lines will all be getting changed from analogue to digital. Everything will cease analogue in 2027. So it's about making sure the system is able to receive everything through this digital network. So for the customers, things won't change. It's about how we get the information from the customer's house into the centre so that we can respond, and that's what we're looking to upgrade.
Is that okay, Councillor Gregg? Any other questions? Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. I just wondered if you could provide a little bit more information in terms of what the disaster recovery system is that's in place, and is that something that's been utilised? And also, it does state that the current system is experiencing numerous failings due to the age and pressure of supporting digital connections. I just wondered if when there are those failings, is that being recorded within the unmet need reporting and statistics there? And finally, if we've known about this plan since 2018, why has it taken so long to get to this place before we're making these improvements?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Speed, for your questions. So in terms of the disaster recovery unit, we have had to use that before. So we have had incidents where things have failed and we've had to make plans to move to the centre in Arbroath. I think that happened during Storm Babette. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's when we used it at that point. And we have good systems in place. We've also got other we've got emergency phone lines for family members and things, but given there's over 3,000 people, it's very difficult to try and contact people in that sort of situation. We have advised families and service users that we have got challenges with the service just now. So people are aware that that things are difficult. We had to call out engineers recently, which we do, and it works well. People are very responsive, so we can pick things up, but it's happening more and more frequently, and that's why we're moving to try and be having a more reliable system, for the long term. In terms of is it recorded under unmet need? No, it's not, because it's not one of the criteria that's set out that we report on for unmet need. Because it's for periods when things have been difficult, but we are able to resolve things still at this stage. And why has it not happened since 2018? Well, I think we've had COVID. I think there's been other options that have been explored and looked at, this is seen as the best way forward in order to try and make a long-term solution that will be sustainable for the future. So hopefully that's answered all your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No. We go to any comments? No. Okay, we'll move to the recommendations, which are: 1, approves the procurement of the digital receiving centre service via the Scotland Excel framework as detailed in the report. 2, delegates authority to the Chief Officer to formally enter into and execute and deliver the necessary contract documents for the procurement of a digital ARC service via the Scotland Excel framework. And 3, notes this will also meet the Openreach deadline of January 2027 that involves switching off the analogue telephony over to digital networks. Do we agree? Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move now to item 10, which is page 80 in your papers. This is Common Good Funds Additional Projects Approval 2024, and we have the Director of Infrastructure Environment to... Oh, yep, sorry, I've just thought that I forgot there are a couple of declarations of interest who have now left, have they? Yeah.
Yes, Vice Convener, that's correct. And just to clarify, if we could deal with the Montrose aspects first as a separate item, Daly. Yes, please, and then that will allow the other members to come back in for the rest of the report.
Okay, thank you, Convener. Just to introduce the report, this report seeks common good projects in Arbroath, Brechin, Forfar and Montrose. Details of each of the projects is provided in Appendix 2. Local elected members were consulted, and the views of the local elected members for each of the projects is also detailed in Appendix 2. A summary of the financial implications on the Common Good Funds, if the committee are minded to agree all the proposed projects, is set out in Section 7 of the report. As just advised by my colleague, Ms Buchanan, if I could refer you in the first instance to Appendix 2 and specifically the project regarding the reprofiling rather of rock armour at Montrose Bay to aid protect the golf course at Montrose, and we are seeking approval for 10,000. Apologies if I've not got it in front of me, but I think it's 10,000, Convener, of Montrose Common Good funding. And Convener, if we could just seek approval of that particular project first of all.
I'll ask if there are any questions on that section. Yep, Councillor Nicholl.
I see the estimate was 18. Why are they giving them just 10?
Well.
Yeah, we actually met with the local members to discuss the value in terms of what we should award. In summary, the quotation we provided at 18, first of all, what I would say is that through the long-term work that we are seeking to carry out, and specifically we are targeting the installation of rock groins on the beach as part of the long-term solution. We would hope that by doing the work together, we might be able to bring that cost down. The quote was received was purely in isolation, the reprofiling the rock, whereas if we have a contractor on site, not guaranteed, but we would hope that we will bring the cost down. The other point that was put forward was that the Montrose Golf Links Limited is an ongoing commercial concern, and it was considered, well, the conclusion that was reached was that if required, a contribution could be made by the golf links, and the conclusion, as I said, was that 10,000 was the appropriate sum of money to bring forward to committee today.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Vice Convener. The reprofiling of the rock armour, could you just give a bit more explanation about that? So, obviously, I presume this has happened during the course of Storm Babette, so part of the dune has either washed away from behind the rock armour, or the sand in front of the rock armour has caused the rock armour to move.
Yeah, just to help clarify that point, after not just Storm Babette but the subsequent storms over the winter, the sand dunes retreated in the area where the rock armour previously was. I think it was to protect one of the tees of the golf course. I think it was around 9 to 12 metres that it retreated, but also the lowering of the beach meant that where the rock armour had been left was really not providing any form of protection. And what we're reprofiling it is to protect the new surveyed dune, where the golf course would like to hold the line in terms of protecting the assets, which is the tees and the greens in particular. So it's because of the retreat that happened over the winter, the lowering of the beach. Therefore, we need to move the rock to protect the most vulnerable parts of the golf course. I would just emphasise that this is purely with a view to protecting the golf course rather than part of our wider approach in terms of the long-term protection of the Montrose Bay.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. So what you're saying is where the rock armour was, the dunes then eroded, so you're pushing the rock armour back to where the dunes are now. So going forward, what's to stop that dune then? I mean, are we just going to keep pushing the rock armour further and further back every time a bit of the dune disappears? Because that sounds like we're just sort of chasing our tails and not actually fixing the big problem, which is the erosion of the dunes.
You're correct, this is a temporary fix and it's targeting a very small area, but I think the case is that it is reducing the impact by having the rock armour in place. It is not part of a long-term solution in terms of the protection of the wider bay and the dune system there, but we do keep in consultation with the golf links, and there is a strong feeling that the rock armour put there will slow down the loss of the golf course at that particular spot. So while you're quite correct is that it will not prevent it, it will offer a level of protection. There is no guarantee on that in terms of it is a dynamic, the coast, of course the weather is dynamic as well, but the conclusion was that it would assist in terms of providing some level of protection for a specific point on the golf course.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Can we then agree to approve that small part of the report? Yeah, Councillor Gregg.
Before, I just want to. I was going to make a comment in relation to that, but if you do, you want me to do that now, or do you want to do that when we do the whole report?
Yeah, do it now.
Okay. I've said before, and I think everyone's quite well aware of the problems that Montrose faces with the erosion of the dunes, and it's something that I've commented at previous meetings before. It's something that we should all be deeply concerned about. I do think it it just goes to show, I mean, spending £10,000 to move some rocks back a bit, to potentially then have to spend another £10,000 to keep moving them back every time the dunes move. And as Mr Daly has said, it's not a permanent fix, and it might not guarantee it might actually do very much. So I think that highlights more than anything else just how critical a state the dunes in Montrose are, and that we need to be seriously looking at a long-term fix for these dunes to ultimately protect not just the golf course but Montrose as a whole.
Thank you for that. I apologise. I've omitted to bring in Councillor Braze, who notes hands up. Sorry about that. Councillor Braze, would you like to come in?
Yes, just to echo what Mr Daly said, and to point out that the Montrose golf courses are on common good land. Montrose Common Good is the owner, the landlord. Now, whilst we're committing £10,000 of common good money to this project, Montrose Golf Links, through their diligence and very careful management, are in a fairly strong financial position, and they are able to contribute to this project. But as Mr Daly pointed out, we're hoping that the £18,000 value might be reduced by the way that the contract has gone about. So all good, but also to come back on Councillor Gregg's point there, we do have a plan for dealing with Montrose. It's a well worked out plan. It's still a lot to be thought about and a lot to be done. But this is a fairly simple and straightforward thing that's going to help Montrose, preserve Montrose golf course specifically, and probably be in some way incorporated into the bigger scheme of things as it develops. That's all, thanks.
Thank you for that. I note that there are other Montrose issues on here. Should we address them while we have the members out? No?
Maybe my understanding is that they've not taken part as they are members on the board of the Montrose Golf Links Limited. I would refer to my colleague though, Ms Buchanan, whether we should continue or not.
Yes, it's just for this matter. We can come back.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll get them back in. Yeah, I'm sorry, remiss of me. Do we agree? Do we agree that single part of the agenda?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back. We've dealt with that issue obviously in both of your absence. Graham, do you want to continue? Now that they're back, you might be repeating yourself.
Just summarise, this report is seeking approval for the common good projects that are detailed in Appendix 2, with the exception of the Montrose Bay rock armour, which has already been considered now, and we are seeking the committee's approval to progress these projects.
Thank you very much for that. I'll open that up for questions, but not any questions on the issue we've just agreed. Thank you. Any questions? No questions. Any comments? No comments. We'll move to the recommendations, which are 1, that we approve the requested funding of the projects from Arbroath, Brechin, Forfar and Montrose Common Good Funds as detailed in Appendix 2. 2, note the updated budget position for each Common Good Fund as contained in Section 7 of this report. Do we approve? Agreed. We'll move now to item 11, active travel transformation, infrastructure tier 1 programme of works, and it's page 86 in your papers. And again, we have the Director of Infrastructure and Environment.
Thank you, Convener. This report updates the committee on the delivery of the programme of projects funded in 2023-24 through the Cycling, Walking and Safer Routes Fund. The report seeks approval to accept the funding offer from Transport Scotland for 2024-25 and approval of the programme of projects to be funded during this financial year 24-25 via the Active Travel Transformation Infrastructure Tier 1 Fund. The list of the proposed projects are listed in Appendix 2 of the report. Just to aid members and provide some clarification, the Transport Scotland have amended the title of the funding from Cycling, Walking and Safer Routes Fund to Active Travel Infrastructure Tier 1 Fund. So this is not a new fund that's coming forward, but rather the change of title. Thank you.
I'll open to questions. Councillor MacDonald.
For anybody that's decided to tune in at home, I'd just like to ask Graham if he could detail how these projects get decided upon, where they come from, and how they come to this part of the procedure that we then get to choose and decide on.
Certainly. This is funding that has been received on an annual basis for the last few years now, and each of these years we have undertaken a consultation exercise where we have invited groups and individuals to submit recommendations, suggestions in terms of how we can improve active travel across Angus and within communities. And it has been well received. We've had a large number of suggestions that officers of the Roads and Transportation team have followed up to assess. In terms of how we've assessed them, we have aligned it with our active travel strategy, and we have scored them in terms of the demand and the impact that they will have, the deliverability. I think it's detailed in the report. In fact, paragraph 5.2 provides a summary of how we assess these. There are, although we've been fortunate to receive a relatively large sum of money, we have had more projects coming forward than we could fund. So what we have been able to do is we've had a pipeline of projects, and these are shown in Appendix 3. So although we might not be able to fund it this specific year, we've kept it in the pipeline of projects. And when we were considering the projects this year, we took into account the suggestions that came forward. Just one further point to add is some of the projects that came forward have been feasibility studies, and where we have carried out, I think, for example, one of them is the network between Montrose and Brecon, I think, is one, which is a larger scale project, and it's something that would require a larger sum of money, but we've kept in the pipeline of projects with a view, when funding is available, that we're in a good position to seek that. I hope that provides a suitable summary.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Graham. I noticed from the potential Tier 2 projects there are still quite a few in my ward, which is really pleasing to see. Things like the Airlie path, the Newtile Glams Keeler path, Newtile to Dundee, Muirhead Piper Dam, Verdon into my neighbouring ward, and the Lift Backmuir Road. And you mentioned latent demand as a criteria. Now, obviously, these serve smaller communities, and you might not get the numbers, but in terms of qualitative difference that they make to the community, I would suggest that they're quite significant, and there's still high interest in having those come to the top of the pile. And I just wondered how you balance that qualitative versus quantitative demand in your assessments, and also how soon after this year's upcoming budget settlements and programme for government will you have a clearer idea, do you think, of the funding we might get? Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Bell, I'm familiar with some of those projects and would have to agree they're definitely projects that we would like to progress. And I know that there are, within those communities, there is very vocal in the benefits it would bring for people. For that reason, it is in our pipeline of projects, and we're very keen to take that forward. I could just give you an assurance it is in the pipeline of projects, and it will be considered again. And I take cognizance of the points that you've made, and I'll make sure that those factors are being considered going forward. I think the second part of your question was around the knowledge we have about future funding. Unfortunately, that's not something that I am aware of. I just know from experience this year is that it was only relatively recently that we discovered what our allocation was. Previously, it was known as the CWSR, Cycle and Walk and Safer Routes, but the title, of course, changed. So, unfortunately, I'm unsure what future years' provision will be, and I think it's fair to say we are relying on the availability of non-core grant funding going forward. And again, I just gave you assurance that we're trying to put ourselves in the best position possible to apply for this funding, whether it's on an allocation basis or whether it's on a competitive application basis. It's something the team are actively trying to put Angus in the best position to make sure we secure that funding.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor? Yep. Councillor Speed.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the kind of ongoing themes or queries that comes up in relation to the Places for Everyone project is just the kind of query around how will that new piece of infrastructure link with other kind of routes and networks in the town. And so I know that there's obviously been a feasibility study carried out in terms of those kind of other routes and connections. I just wondered if we could have an update with regards to how that feasibility study went. And also I know that it's that particular piece of work is on the pipeline. And I just wondered what the kind of likelihood is of that kind of work being able to be taken forward, to be funded, so that it kind of smoothly kind of links in once the Places for Everyone project is finished. Is that, are we hopeful that we can do that?
Yes, actually, I'm joined by my colleague Paul Downey, who's I know has actually been actively looking into how we maximise the opportunities to connect with the Arbroath Places for Everyone. And I would just invite Paul, if I think he's on the call. Yes, he is. I'll just invite Paul to come in to just give an explanation on that.
Thank you, Mr. Daly, and thank you, Councillor Speed, for the question. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of the points made about the Arbroath Places for Everyone project have very much been how do you get onto it, how do you get onto it, off of it, and the bigger, wider networks. We have carried out some concept designs last year with a view that they will be added to the pipeline for future submission to Tier 2. So Tier 2 funding from Transport Scotland is for everything that's fully detailed designed up, costed up, and ready to be delivered the next financial year. So I think with the current works on the A92, the Places for Everyone scheme, we would very much look to try and wait until most of that has been delivered before then applying for future funding to allow for the wider network to be developed. We've also got a Tier 2 application that we're looking to work up for next year. That's the wider NCN1 that feeds into the Places for Everyone scheme and also joins into the Places for Everyone scheme that Dundee delivered earlier in the year. But it's still in that pipeline of projects with a view to identify funding to take the next step forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Can we move to comments? Are there any comments? No comments. Okay, we'll move to the recommendations, which are 1, Agree to accept the funding offer from Transport Scotland as set out in section 4.2 of this report, delegating authority to the Director of Infrastructure and Environment to execute and deliver any necessary acceptance documents following consultation with the Director of Finance and the Director of Legal, Governance and Change. 2. Notes the amended programme for projects undertaken during 2003-2004 as set out in Appendix 1 to this report. 3, I think that should say. Approves the Active Travel Transformation and Infrastructure Tier 1 programme of projects to be undertaken during financial year 2004-2005 as set out in Appendix 2 to this report. And 3 or 4, delegates authority to the Director of Infrastructure and Environment to substitute projects listed in Appendix 2 with A brackets projects listed in Appendix 3 and or brackets B other active travel projects if required. Do we agree to approve? Agree. Thank you very much. We'll move now to item 12, Common Good Register, Brechin and Forfar, page 103 in your papers. And I have the director. Who do we have talking to this one, sorry? Myself. Oh, sorry. Jackie.
Thank you, Vice Convener. This is one of 2 reports relating to the Common Good Register for Angus, and it pertains to the buildings and land. In relation to Brechin and Forfar, we've gone out to consult with a draft list of properties that are purported to form part of the Common Good, and we've also included in that draft consultation properties which should be excluded from the Common Good for both Brechin and Forfar on legal grounds. In terms of Brechin, there was no representations received. Therefore, the committee is asked to adopt the list of land and buildings set out in Appendix 1 as part of the Common Good for Brechin, and to publish that in accordance with the legislation. Appendix 2 has a detailed list of buildings that are to be excluded from Brechin Common Good. In terms of Forfar, there was 1 representation. It didn't have any comments, they had no concerns, and they simply thanked the solicitor for doing the work involved in relation to pulling all this together. So in terms of that, the recommendation is to agree to adopt the list of land and buildings as set out in Appendix 4, and to note in Appendix 5 those that are excluded from the Forfar Common Good. I would like to just add that it's been a significant piece of work looking at all of the Common Good properties in Angus, and I'd like to pass on my thanks, if I may, to Mr Andrew Wise, who did a huge amount of work on this, and also together with Marie Callender. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? Any comments? Councillor Clark first.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to add my congratulations and thanks, because it is a huge amount of work, and Common Good's never easy to tackle, as we well know. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Convener. I had a question about the Brechin Common Good Register, and I would like to thank the officers for the effort in keeping me right with it, and much appreciate their input. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'd echo the words of Mrs Buchanan and my Forfar colleague, Councillor Clark. There's a huge, massive amount of work has gone into this, and I've find it quite fascinating. So I'd like to thank them as well, personally. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gregg. If there are no other comments, are we happy to agree the recommendations 1 to 7, to save me reading them all out? Thank you very much. With that, we will move to item 13, Common Good Register for Montrose, page 144 in your papers. And again, we have the Director of Legal and Governance to talk to this one.
Thank you, Vice Convener. As the Vice-Convener said, this is the Common Good Register, the proposed one for Montrose. It's an earlier stage. We're just going out to consult on the list. So the committee in that regard is asked to note and approve the draft list of land and buildings in Appendix 1 and agree that this will be consulted on. And then following the consultation, we'll come back in terms of that list and provide you with any responses to the consultation and hopefully provide a final list that we can then publish as our final list of common good properties for the time being, certainly. And then in terms of that, also to note the progress with the progress in terms of the common good examination for the remaining areas that we've not dealt with as yet, which is Kirriemuir, Monifieth and Carnoustie. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'll open to questions. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and yes, certainly thanks to the hard work of Andrew Wise, the solicitor, doing this work. It's been a huge amount of effort, and I had a few conversations with him about one or two buildings in Montrose. I guess from the public interest point of view, this is always something that certain members of the public are very interested in. There's one or two surprises in the proposals for Montrose, in that 3 significant buildings which have always been regarded as general fund buildings have now been declared to be probably common good. That is Montrose Library, Montrose Museum and Montrose Town Hall. It might be useful for the public just to understand why those decisions have been taken, or that these judgments have been made. And perhaps the other one that I'm personally always a bit curious about is Montrose Academy, which would appear to be at the intersection of 2 slabs of common good ground, is not common good. So if I could maybe get sort of in layperson's language a simple explanation for that, that would be quite useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. So I did not do the register. It was Andy Wise and my team who's done all the hard work. So I'm just here to answer some questions today. So Montrose Library, Montrose Town Hall and Montrose Museum and Art Gallery, we have included these for the first time as common good. There is a full explanation on the register as to why they're now considered to be common goods. Quite simply, when we've examined the deeds, they've all had clear indications in them that they are common good properties, such as the ongoing use for the public or the community. We've also been unable to find any formal appropriation, so that would be moving from a common good account to another account for any of these, or any explanations in any of those deeds which would explain why they are not to be considered as common good. The other point that you asked about was in relation to Montrose Academy, which we've indicated should not be considered as part of the common good. So again, the full explanation for anybody who's interested is included in the list. And again, quite simply, once something is acquired or used for a statutory purpose, so in this case, it's been used by the Education Authority at the time for use of a school, that means that it then ceases to be considered as a common good asset.
Any other questions? Any comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree recommendations 1 to 4 of the report? Thank you. We'll move now to item 14, UK Shared Prosperity Fund update and communities and place priority funding allocation. This is page 175 in your papers. We have the Director of Vibrant Communities and Sustainable Growth to talk to this report. Alison.
Thank you. The criteria for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and delivery of the investment plan for Angus requires all the remaining funding to be spent by the 31st of March 2025. This report therefore seeks approval to allocate 1.1 million from the communities in place priority of this fund. This will be for a community asset fund for capital costs to support community-led projects and for work to the 4 buildings previously occupied by Angus Alive. Members are also referred to the information report that was recently shared on the formerly occupied Angus Alive buildings and the briefing to members last week.
Do members have any questions? No questions, any comments? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I took part in a member briefing the other day with relation to the former Angus Alive buildings, which was held by Vibrant Communities and some other officers. I have to say that was an incredibly good briefing to have. It was very positive in so many different ways, and alleviated quite a lot of the fears I think many of us had when these buildings were going to be handed back to the council. I think it was Councillor Duff at the time, no, Braze, sorry, Councillor Braze mentioned when we previously discussed this about the handling back, that handing these buildings back and offering them up to communities that would run them would probably do a better job than Angus Alive. And I think from that formal briefing that we had, the interest that's been shown, along with a lot of hard work that's been put in with Vibrant Communities, has indeed proven what Councillor Brace had said, that these community groups, along with some help with the council, will do far better than Angus Alive. So I would hope that with all the remaining buildings that Angus Alive currently have, they perhaps take a leaf out of the book of our team from Vibrant Communities and our community groups and go into fully utilise the buildings that they currently have, whereas they underutilise the ones that they've then disposed of.
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Gregg. Are there any other comments? Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the briefing, but I have been briefed by officers since then, which has been really helpful. Just to say really that I'm pleased to see that progress has been made and that we're also in a bit of a different position in terms of recognising just how important it is to support those community groups, the work that they do and the value that we rightly should be placed on them within our communities, and the difference that may make. I'm pleased to see as well that there has been a significant reduction in terms of the cost to repair the community centre roof. I think that was a really good move in terms of just kind of re-looking at that and seeing what we can do to help do a kind of interim repair and quite a significant saving. So yeah, I'm pleased to see the work so far and look forward to further reports on all of these projects coming forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Very quickly, because Councillor Gregg and Councillor Speed have pretty much nailed it. I think that there's a lot of work being done. The change in strategy around how we look at these buildings is welcome, and the work of the Communities Committee that put in working together, as opposed to fighting, brought that change with regards to looking at the spend on the Arbroath Community Centre. So I think all in all, I appreciate the work that officers have put in, and I welcome as the convener of the Communities Committee, I welcome the comments from colleagues across the chamber.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, Vice Convener. And yes, I particularly welcome what's going on at the Engels Memorial Hall in Edsall. Huge effort put in by our officers to get the very best out of the Engels Memorial Hall for the people who live in Edsall and its surrounding areas, and the huge effort that has come forward from the community and the goodwill to try and make sure that the Engels Memorial Hall continues to be maintained and continues to be as splendid as it currently is, and most importantly, to ensure that it continues to be used by the community for decades, perhaps centuries to come. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braze. With that, we can move to the recommendations. Are we agreed? Will we agree recommendations 1 to 4 of the report? Agreed. Thank you very much. We'll move to item 15, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Application Fund, page 187 in your papers. And we have the Director of Infrastructure and Environment to talk to this report.
Thank you, Convener. This report seeks authorisation for Angus Council officers to make an application to the Scottish Futures Trust for the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Fund, in collaboration with Perth and Kinross Council. The report details the progress that has been made to date to grow the EV charging infrastructure in Angus using grant funding and how this further funding application can help deliver a regional strategy for continued growth of the charging network. This report only seeks approval to submit the funding application, and further reports would be brought forward to the relevant committees regarding acceptance of any grant offer and detailed plans for the future rollout of charging points in Angus.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Having recently come back from holiday from another local authority, I did kind of look at things slightly differently, and one thing I did notice was how few electric charging points that particular local authority had, whereas here in Angus, I think quite successfully and well, we've got them everywhere. So this money is looking to increase the amount of EV charging points that we have, which is good, but at the same time I would ask how well utilised are the points that we currently have? I note there are some that appear to always have an electric car plugged into them, and then there are others that I've never seen anything at all whatsoever. So do we have any information on how well used our charging points are, point by point, and do we have any idea as to roughly how many electric vehicles there may be in Angus registered here that take advantage of it? And further, when looking to increase the amount that we actually have, how is that going to be worked out? How is that going to be targeted? How are we going to decide where to put these new EV charging points?
In terms of, I think, the information request, I'm quite confident we could provide some information in terms of the usage of each of our points. It's not something I have available right now that I could provide, but I do know that information should be available, and be quite happy to share it with you, Councillor Gregg. I've just I'd consult with the team and see what the best format was of that. I know that relatively speaking, they are well used. Naturally, some more than others, depending on their location. In terms of, I think, the second part of the question, in terms of the rollout of the EV chargers, I'm actually joined by my colleague Scott Dryden. Scott's done a lot of work working with our colleagues in Perth and Kinross Council in terms of preparing this funding application. And in fact, just you mentioned there that we have been successful in terms of accessing funding and the relatively high number of EV chargers. Luckily, we do have in Angus. But I think I would invite Scott to come in and just maybe give a bit more explanation in terms of the strategy, in terms of the rollout of the locations of these further EV charging points. So Scott, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yes, no problem. Thanks, Mr. Daly, for that, and thanks, Councillor Gregg, for your query. Yes, we have an update. It's a very fast-moving subject, as everybody knows. We have an update going to committee next month in terms of our strategy and what direction we're going in. In terms of the siting with the new available funding, should we be successful, the sites will be identified at a later date. There is notional suggestions made by our consultant as to where we could potentially put them. However, they will be agreed on later and obviously reported to committee for approval. Thank you.
Councillor Gregg.
If I may, I asked that question specifically because the vast majority of the charging points are in car parks, which is obviously quite convenient for a lot of things. But when it comes to trying to encourage people to switch to electric, if they don't live in a house with a driveway or have a garage, it makes it very difficult for them to charge. I know there are some technology and things coming forward to be able to convert street lamps and things like that, so you can have these EV charging points in a more residential area, which would alleviate a lot of that issue. So I was kind of wondering if we might be going down that kind of route, or if it's going to be, we'll just stick some more in some more car parks.
Yeah, I know the team have looked in detail at these possibilities, and you're quite correct. There are different innovative ways of looking at these. Sometimes when we've looked at them, the feasibility has been rather questionable. But I think the best thing is to again invite Mr. Dryden just to come in, just to provide an explanation in the work that, or the consideration we've given to such approaches.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Daly. Yep. Yeah, that's a query that comes up quite often, and it's not just a problem for Angus Council. It's a problem nationally. I was in a meeting just before this one about a regional EV strategy, and that query came up, and Transport Scotland were in attendance, and we're looking to have an update on that in the next few months, which are very much welcome, because there's more and more inquiries coming in from our residents on how we're taking that forward. So we welcome any update from Transport Scotland, which will be coming soon.
Thank you. Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I sometimes get feedback from residents, which I've passed on previously, in terms of some of the difficulties they sometimes have accessing, like Councillor Gregg has already described. There have been people that have found that, the charging connection isn't working, or I think we've maybe got more slow charging speeds than we do some of the faster charging sites, which again maybe aren't being used as well. So I think any investment in anything that we do going forward, we need to ensure that we get the locations right, and that it is up to date and up to speed, if you like, as well. But just for clarity, you've said that the application that you're seeking approval for, you're not going to have to be within that application identifying where those locations and sites are going to be. Okay. So there is that flexibility going forward to...
Yeah. It's just we'll be looking to potentially put in two hubs, which will be multi chargers in one location, and then beyond that there will be fast chargers which will be located all over Angus, and they might be in isolation. So, but yeah, we won't be green anything yet. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Are any Councillor MacDonald?
It's about, I think, hitting that sweet spot of technology before you overly commit into something. I think that's going to be the vital thing. And I suppose we should declare a slight interest that I've got an EV car. So, you learn these things as you go a lot of the time. But that's I think, our benefit in our curse in Angus. We've got a lot of older charging technologies that still deliver relatively fast speeds. But there are maybe items that we may need to look at in terms of how we offer our electric charging infrastructure that we've got now versus the new models that are coming. And it is that thing for me, is about how do we make sure that we don't get left behind, which I think this is quite important for, while simultaneously keeping the older network up to scratch. And maybe our charge times on our older slow chargers and the times you get in the car park to use them, we need to have a wee look at how we work them in the future, because sometimes you're maybe not getting quite the charge you need for the time limit you've got. He says as someone that's got multiple overcharge fees to his name. But thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree recommendation 1, 2 of the report? Agreed. Takes us to item 16, grant offer Milton of Clover Caravan Park improvements, page 190 in your papers. And again, we have the Director of Infrastructure and Environment to talk to this report.
This report seeks approval to accept a funding offer from Cairngorms National Park Authority under the Visitor Infrastructure Improvement Programme for improvement works at the council-owned Milton of Clover Car Park. As detailed in the report, a grant offer of up to £63,400 is available to carry out works to improve drainage, accessibility and biodiversity at the car park, and it is proposed that the works are progressed and completed this financial year 2024-2025, and we seek the committee's approval to accept the funding.
Thank you. We'll open up the questions. We first have Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Graham. My ask is to bite their hand off for that grant. I think this is really important, actually. The Community Council that covers the area will be delighted about that. We hear lots of complaints around people parking on verges and people not getting through because they can't access car park. You said it would be completed this financial year. I'm just concerned in terms of the timing with worse weather coming up, although I fully appreciate we've had rubbish weather over the summer. How soon this side of the end of March do you think? Would it be done before winter or after? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. It is actually scheduled for after winter, and to be specific, I believe it is March that is programmed for the works to be undertaken.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any comments? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. And basically, the recommendation is, do we agree to accept the funding offer? Yes. Thank you. Move to item 17, Road Safety Improvement Fund 2024-25, page 193 in your papers. And again, we have the Director of Infrastructure and Environment to talk to this report.
This report seeks approval to accept funding from Transport Scotland under their Road Safety Improvement Fund for 2024-25. The allocation for this financial year is £251,343, and as detailed in the report, the funding will be used to carry out works on a priority basis aimed at reducing the number and severity of road traffic accidents in Angus.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from members? Any comments? Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Convener. Yeah, just to really welcome any road safety improvements, that particularly if they're being funded by central government, and welcome it, I think. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I can't really help myself. As a driving instructor and a local councillor, I would have to say that as much as these things are welcome and they will help improve these junctions, the onus is ultimately on the driver to drive in a safe manner and driving at an appropriate speed, namely as being able to stop in the distance that you can see to be clear.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move to recommendations. There is only one. Do we agree to accept the funding offer? Thank you. The next item 18 is an exempt item. We previously agreed that the public press would leave the meeting for these items.
John, can we stop the live stream, please?